the details after.
Perfect.
So Max was just telling me a story about his ability to be an accidental provocateur. Say more.
Okay, well, basically, I realized through the course of my life that I'm nearly 100% full of shit, something close to it. And in order to discover the extent of the shittiness, I had to ask myself a lot of questions, like the origin, recognizing where I come from, recognizing the genesis of the ideas and the beliefs that I hold. And so this caused me to have some very traumatic realizations. Not like I'm sad and I need therapy, although I have been told by a lot of people that I need therapy, but more like traumatic in a sense that it's a an assault or an impact. It makes an impact on how you think you are as a person. And so after having the identity and self shredded to pieces by just asking why I believe these things and where did I get these ideas from, and trying to harmonize that with the origin of animals and human beings and things like that, I realized there actually wasn't much left, interestingly enough. And the accidental provocateur has been a moniker that I've been assigned because now I'm interested when I talk to somebody and they say something to understand what they really mean about that. And what I've discovered is the more you ask questions, the more that individual will realize that there's no foundation upon which these beliefs rest solidly. And I think people don't really like that a lot of the time. Or a very rare person likes to have their beliefs and the foundation of those beliefs questioned. And I'm just a curious guy, so I'd rather be curious or not to talk to somebody at all. I don't really I don't try to offend or upset anybody really ever. Like it's not even for sport. It comes so naturally anyway that I don't have to try deliberately. So apparently I'm like pretty unknowingly provocative. So for that reason.
Yeah, there's a process. I'm forgetting the name of the exact process. It's APO something, APO something, which is basically the cutting away of we could say the cutting away of knowledge or the cutting away of information or the cutting away of thoughts in order to find the truth. So the idea is the only way you could ever know the truth is to define everything that is not true and to look at everything that is not true, and then from there you find the truth. And I operate from a place where I don't believe that you can be told the truth and you actually hear or see the truth. The truth is something that has to be discovered on your own. No one can tell you what it is.
I'll
And
sure try though.
sure, try. I think there's a lot of people are seeking it. And there was a period of time where I was a self-proclaimed truth seeker, and I think a lot of people that listen to this show would categorize themselves as that, and I do think that that is people's intention. However, I gave that up because there's no truth to seek. The truth is only what it is, and like you, just found out that I was as I started doing a lot of cutting away. I go, oh, I'm full of shit, and uh,
Some of it's good shit.
so that's good shit.
Some of it's really good and kind and funny. Like
Well, we go back. Was it Plato, the good, the true, and the beautiful? Uh,
mm,
and sometimes it may not necessarily be true, but it is good. And and yeah, I was just in a conversation with a friend in the DMs who vehemently disagrees with me regularly, and likes to just basically say that I'm ridiculous in
Mhm.
many different words, and and in those situations, and I've made some social media posts recently that I don't know if you pay attention to my social media. I don't think you do, and probably wouldn't serve you if you did, but I've stirred up some shit recently, and a lot of people have.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been doing some shit stirring, and the one of my reminders anytime I'm getting into an argument, which if you're gonna stand for anything, you're gonna be disagreeable. That's the nature of standing for something. That means that somebody's gonna stand against what you have going on. So the reminder I always keep for myself is if I want to stand a chance in an argument, I have to come from a place of curiosity. If you come from a place of knowing, then basically you're just going to come to a standstill with whoever you're talking to. And you never leave by being curious, you leave the door open to actually being able to learn something instead of just operating from what you think you know.
Well, an argument is kind of funny because how do you win an argument? Does that even like really happen unless it's in a court or something like that? Because if you're in an argument, it means that you are proposing or making a claim and hopefully backing it up with some sort of evidence. But it's rare that you're going to change someone's mind with that anyway. So if you have a discussion, it means that you're fully curious. You're not even trying to make a point, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I've tried to, like yourself, remain curious about my own thoughts. And sometimes people go, well, why don't you believe this person or this institution or whatever it is? And I go, hey, I barely believe my own thoughts. Why am I going to believe the thoughts of somebody else? I can't even validate those things. I'm
Hmm.
it's hard enough to validate what I've got going on in my own perception.
Well, it's like the tribe of atheism. Atheism is a religion for the intelligentsia to pat each other on the backs for how smart they are, because it's a belief that's based on faith, ironically enough. But I think it's mostly you just want to fit in with your tribe. And I think a lot of people are the same way with the belief in God. They want to fit in with their tribe. But one of those communities is much softer and kinder and probably has a better cookout. I'm like I don't know, like maybe uh I don't know why that was what came to
Who
my
do you
mind.
think has
Like
the best which
Southern Baptist,
Southern
best
Baptists have
food. Southern Baptist have the best food. And I'm thinking mostly black people, by the way. Like, I don't know if that's what it is in your mind. Like, I'm thinking people from the South
well, I
who are
grew up in the
Baptist,
South.
and there's a lot of singing. There's a lot of
Well,
singing. There's
whether
probably
you're
like checkered tablecloths. I don't know. That's in
you're
my mind. That's what
you're
Southern
not
Baptist
wrong. You're
means.
not wrong. Well, it doesn't matter what race you are in the South. I mean, I come from the South. I grew up in the church, and yeah, man, there was crawfish boils. There were
That's what I'm talking about.
there was barbecue. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of food. There was a lot of singing, uh, dude. And what's funny is the older I get, and having lived in California, where I think it's where the majority of the atheists tend to congregate, and
Hmm.
being in California for a while. And by the way, I'll mention I was I would have proclaimed myself to be atheist at one point, and so having lived all over, kind of sometimes I'm like, man, I wouldn't mind after hanging out with all these different groups if I could just hang out with like a Christian church group of people
Hmm.
that like psychedelics. I think that we would just I the values line up, the food lines up, The singing lines up. I mean, I find myself singing Hallelujah with a group every once in a while. It's it's really nice. It's really nice. So who knows?
Yeah. And
I doubt you're going to find me at church on Sunday morning, but I do like a lot of those people.
yeah, and I'm not like anti-atheist either. I do think it's funny that atheists will almost bully people who are agnostic into atheism. That's something I've gotten a few times.
Oh, really?
I'm like, I'm agnostic. I don't really know. Seems like the same amount of faith is required to believe there is a God versus there is definitely zero gods.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, well, that means you're an atheist." I'm like, I don't think so." And they're like, "Yeah, if you don't believe," and I'm like, "Huh, okay, wow, that's
Well,
very." And
that
I'm not against that either. Like, you know,
well, that
believe
that
whatever you
comes
want to
down
believe.
to people desire certainty, and a true
Well,
agnostic is somebody who can be present with uncertainty, which means that if you can hold that and feel safe while experiencing uncertainty, then you're in a good spot.
well, and I don't have a ticket to any of the parties as an agnostic. I like can't go to the church. I can't go to the atheist meetup. It's like persona non grata. But the whole reason I bring it up in the first place is it's about beliefs and it's about trust. It's about faith, and you have to be part of a group. You can't live in a vacuum. So you can be part of a friend group, but um, most people are not hip with a lot of differences in certain core beliefs. So oftentimes people will fall in line with whoever they believe in their tribe. And then one other thing is that it's impossible to do your own research on everything. It's impossible. Like if you get a doctor and a lawyer and an electrician to do some services for you. You get an electrician to wire your house. You get a doctor to, uh, you know, give you a new kidney, and you get a lawyer to, I don't know, do some sort of word warrioring for you. How do you how do you check their work? You
Uh,
can't. You got to just trust they're going to do it well and believe that there's some recourse in the system that we have because you can't you can't do all of it. You can do some research ahead of time, but you can't micromanage every detail like that. So you have to ultimately put some trust in other people.
yeah, and I mean, you do end up knowing if they did a good job or not. It's in the
Ultimately,
result. Yeah, and it's in the
yeah.
result. Uh,
Well, and
and
sometimes
this is
they
why
do a
I'm
bad
always a
job and you never find out.
yeah. I'm a big fan of just keeping pack of, keeping track of people's track records. You know, what's your track record? You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's my number one way to go to like, oh, who should I use? I mean, same reason, you know, the one time I didn't check the reviews on a restaurant I got it a couple weeks ago, Ashley looks at me and goes, "What the hell?" I was like, "Ah, I didn't check the reviews. I just saw the pictures." And so
They got you.
got me. Dude, I stopped in Hot Springs, Arkansas. There's this like hotel restaurant that has like when you walk in, they act like they got all their shit together, but if you uh like if you stay there and you eat their food, you realize that everything's just dressed up and it's actually really bad. They have like all these fancy words on the menu and they're charging, you know, California prices for the appetizer. I'm like, oh shit, we found like the one thing in Arkansas that's gonna like do the thing. And then, you know, it's pretty much frozen food from Costco when it came out. We didn't even get entrees. We're just like, oh, you know, I'm
Mm,
just gonna go back to my room and eat uh some canned mussels and an apple for dinner.
nice.
So uh yeah, track records, reviews. I think that's a great way to go. And that was actually one of the things over the last few years that people were pointing at with Dr. Fauci was uh you know, he's somebody who was in charge of an institution that was putting out information, but if you check the track record, it's not too hot. But
Mm,
most people don't really pay attention for longer than like a year or two. I mean, well, really 48 hours, I think, is pretty much the news cycle. Um, but if you look back at what Dr. Fauci did in the 80s and 90s, you're like, yeah, that was pretty bad. I'm not going to say it myself what he did. You guys can go research that yourself. Um, but yeah, that's an example of somebody with a track record, and we look at uh, if we look at government's track record uh, with murder, they've uh, they've they've committed more murder than any other group on the planet. So
Is that
maybe,
like military included or something like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they've killed more
To-
people with through
totally.
violence.
Totally.
I think that.
Yeah.
I mean that was one reason I joined the Navy. I was like, I think I could get away with murder, and
This just in, folks. Mike has a fetish for murdering, apparently.
I was an angry young man. Don't worry, folks. I have found mushrooms since then, and I'm very peaceful.
Yeah, I had my cage fighting phase as well, so I can relate. I was an
Yeah,
angry young man. I need to kick something.
yeah. You just want to have any. Oh, I can punch somebody in the face legally. Okay, I'll put me
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. Let's. I want to change gears real quick because holy shit, have you played with? I don't know if I talked about it. No, I haven't. Chat GPT. Have we talked about that yet?
No, I'm familiar with what it is.
Have you played with it yet?
No. Don't you have to make an account or something like that?
Yeah, it's about as difficult
Yeah.
as starting a Twitter account.
Yeah. I decided not to.
Yeah, uh, I did. I was not going to do it, and then I went over to my buddy's house. I have a lot of friends in the like innovative tech world. They're into AI and
Hmm.
crypto and all that stuff, and so go over to my buddy's house, and we're sitting down. He goes, "Have you played with this yet?" And I was like, "Nah." He whips out his laptop, and he's like, let's ask some questions. Well, first we did the AI art generator where you can basically type in a bunch of words and then it will
Mm.
create a picture based on what you told it, and it's pretty trippy what it
I've
can
seen a few of
do.
them. They look great.
Yeah, pretty trippy. The AI art generators that most people are seeing right now are, which I did the other day, which is upload 20 different photos of yourself, different types of shots, and then it basically creates different scenes and outfits and all that stuff for you. Some of the pictures look a lot like me, but a lot of them didn't look like me at all. So it's not that great. But the art generator where you just tell it what you want to see is interesting. And then not only that, there's art generators that are creating people's faces that you would never know was not an actual person.
Mm.
Uh,
I've seen those too.
yeah,
Really
and
trippy.
so we sat down and smoked a little weed first, and then started playing around with AI. And wow, the pictures were trippy. But the thing that really got me was Chat GPT. That was the thing that really got my wheels spinning because
Mm.
uh, I don't know if you've ever been like a fan of Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil and all these futurists. You follow any of the
Hmm.
futurists?
I read Ray Kurzweil's book Transcend a while ago. It was a
Yeah.
super interesting cat with a ton of patents and uh, some of the more recent ones where he patented like the ability to create pictures and videos of people's faces on it was very trippy. I mean, I don't remember the full extent of it, but it was really interesting. It's like he's just collecting patents the same way he eats 200 vitamins every day.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Ray Kurzweil going back to track records is his is pretty good. He's got a pretty decent track record on predictions. Um,
Mm,
I'm not sure about timelines. I think his timelines are tight enough. Anyways, uh, for years I was obsessed with futurism, and I was going to these conferences where one of these guys would be speaking. Seen Peter Diamandis speak. seen quite a few others, and I was all about it. But then I think yeah, I kind of fell off. I was like, well, I'm not going to worry too much about all this technology stuff. I'm just going to worry about the human condition for a bit, and my own health and the health of other people and business and all that stuff. But when I saw this Chat GPT, I don't know why I keep saying Alpha GPT, but Chat GPT, I saw that and started interacting with it, and it hit me that AI is here. The the AGI, the artificial general intelligence. So there's different levels. There's ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, which is what Chat GPT is, and then artificial super intelligence, and which is ASI. And ASI is when uh, artificial intelligence gains more intelligence than the human population combined. So I don't know how far we are from that, but the story I heard when I was studying this stuff is basically once a good enough AGI comes on board and it's self learning and self directed in its learning, uh, ASI is not far behind. It's there's a basically a tipping point. So I got into Chat GPT and we started asking it some pretty basic questions. And I think it's one of those tools. It's one of those tools for me that the more I use it, the more possibilities start becoming revealed. You could treat it like a Google search engine where you could just say, "Hey, what's the best barbecue in town?" And it would, you know, I think it does a better job than Google already at something like that. One thing to keep in mind
Hmm.
is it is limited to information prior to 2022. So uh, I think that has to do with its ability to crunch a certain amount of data, which, from what I understand, in 2 or 3 years, that won't be a problem. It'll be able to crunch data in real time. That is real time data being crunched, and uh, it's yeah. I started asking questions. Oh, we asked it to create an app for us, and we told it exactly what we wanted the app to do, and it started writing the code. And that was the one that really tripped me out. And uh, I'm not a coder, so I can't verify it, but I've heard other coders say that this is about good enough to, it's not going to write the entire code, but it can write the base layer of code you need for your app at this point, and it's in its infancy. And so it really
Does it
tripped me out.
write it, or does it grab it from somewhere else?
Writes it. Like everything.
Because it has to grab it from somewhere. I have so many questions for you because you've said so many things just now.
Perfect. Yeah,
Like,
yeah. We let's talk about it.
certainly, artificial general intelligence needs a distinct definition for me to believe that Chat GPT is it. What do you mean by artificial general intelligence? Because I've heard people mention that. And then the
Um,
second thing, regardless of which tier it is of artificial intelligence, which I believe is a term we use to describe machine learning, using nodes. Um, what drives it, though? It needs to have a focus. It needs to have a task.
well, I think that's what AGI is. Is it's
Comes up
yeah.
with its own tasks.
No, no, no. Well, it. I don't know if ASI, super intelligence, comes up with its own tasks. But basically, the idea is artificial intelligence gets to a point where you can just the input is because it always needs inputs, right? But the inputs can
Mm-hmm.
become uh, l- less specific over time. So
Yep.
uh, at some point, you could say, "Build me $100 million company," and it'll build the website, it'll build the product, it'll do the market research, it'll do
Mm.
everything. And so that's going to be, at the highest level. It does need an input, but it would, a very basic input like that could do it. But from Wikipedia, artificial general intelligence, it says artificial general intelligence is the ability of an intelligent agent to understand or learn any intellectual task that a human being can. It is a primary goal of some artificial intelligence research and a common topic in science fiction and future studies. AGI is also called strong AI, full AI, or general intelligent action. Um, so there's
Hmm.
uh, that's
Interesting.
the Wikipedia's version of it. But right now, what the thing that I have noticed with this artificial intelligence bot is that the quality of the answer you're going to get is dictated by the quality of the question you can ask. And so going back
True
to
with
what we were
people too,
talking,
huh?
exactly. And so we have to get really you have to get really good at asking the right question. Um, and somebody who has been delegating to human beings for a while will probably figure out how to use this a lot faster than somebody who doesn't have any practice delegating. I
Hmm.
see this as a massive delegation tool. And was it the other question you had was it's pulling information from somewhere? Uh,
Yeah, it's I the way it works, as I understand it, is it scrapes the internet for information and then plugs it in where it deems it appropriate.
right. So like if it's coding an app, it's gotta know the language. Say it's coding in Python. It's gotta understand uh, Python, and there's probably examples that it scrapes of, okay, if it's coded like this, then it can do that. The other thing you can do is you can put code in, and it'll tell you where the bugs are at, which is
It's pretty cool.
that's very cool because that's something that eats up a lot of time and development. But
Yeah, I wonder what the accuracy is. I mean, if it's true, it would be silly for anyone who's doing code to not use that.
yeah, and
But
people are
I
already
think,
using it.
yeah.
So
Well, like you have something like GitHub, right? You know what
yep,
GitHub is?
yep,
So basically, you want a chunk of code that does a certain thing, and it's open source, and you just go grab it from right there.
absolutely, yeah. Um, so the idea is also just be easier than GitHub because on GitHub you have to go find it. Here you just ask the
Hmm.
question and then it spits it out for you. And it you know it needing to scrape data from the internet, I think, is not very different from how the human mind works. We're
Definitely
really just
not.
a collection of all the experiences we've had up until this point. We're
Hmm.
scraping data when we're formulating sentences. Things that we think that we're creating out of nothing are really created from something. And so the I see this as not very different. And seeing I think for a lot of people who interact with it will understand their own mind better because of it.
Trippy.
Yeah. And the idea that it can crunch massive amounts of data in such a short period of time, there's so much. One of the problems I've had with the scientific method in helping people live better lives is the scientific method is incredibly good at isolating things, uh,
Hmm.
reducing variables, isolating those variables, and then finding out what's the mechanism of action here, what's causing the effect, all that. But um, it does a very poor job, and it's not designed to integrate back in right into life. It's like, well,
Mm.
okay, I understand that this medication will reduce this, but what are the other total effects of this medication? that have yet to be measured, or they've been measured but hasn't been consolidated into a good uh, piece of information. So for instance, I had ChatGPT write me a literature review last week. I said, write me a literature review on psilocybin and the effects on depression. And it wrote me a lit review, something that took me, I wrote a couple lit reviews in college when I was working on my master's, and it took me a semester to put that together. So, I mean, I probably could have done it in a month if I was super task oriented in college, but I was a little bit scattered. But still, it wrote it in minutes. It wrote me a solid lit review, and then I asked it to format its citations in
Mm.
APA format, and it did. It said, "Oh, these are my citations." I'm like, "Holy shit!" All right, this is now writing lit reviews, and one of the problems in college with the lit review, because the lit review is one of those things that's supposed to take all these isolation and help integrate it, right, and make greater meaning out of a lot of different research studies, and it was able. The problem is you still have the human bias when doing a lit review.
Mm.
Myself and another guy in school did lit reviews on creatine, and we came up with different conclusions based on, uh, you know, I think I used like 70 or 80 citations. I pulled a lot of data and I attempted to crunch it. He did as well. We came up with different suggestions, and there's this human bias involved. Now with AI, uh, I think there's still bias involved because of how it's programmed and the amount of data that's out there for sure. But I think it's way less likely to be running into as much bias as a human being. So I see this possibility of collecting all this data, being able to crunch it and make meaning of it in a way that humans don't have the time to do.
Yeah. Determining after the fact how accurate it is and where everything came from and how it decided how to choose which bits of information. Because I've tried this, like, it's like a talk to transformer or something like that. So I've used something like this, not on the same level, where you write, like, here are the 10 best ways to improve your cardiovascular health or something like that. And then
Mm-hmm.
it'll list out like 10 ways. And you just wonder, like, where is it getting that information from? So it's a lot of like rabbit holes you have to go down to track down how it came to these conclusions. And you and I know that when you're doing some sort of scientific method on something, and especially once you get statistics involved, it can be really difficult to determine what is causality versus just correlation because there are so many variables. And that's one of the things that makes something like this super useful, is it can crunch tons of information all at once. And the thing that makes it difficult is what happens when that doesn't work quite right. And that's where the self-driving cars thing feels similar, because I think we can all agree that cameras and computers are faster than people. There's absolutely no question in my mind. It's just, what about that eventuality where someone's wearing a big fluffy coat and it looks like more asphalt than a person, and it just goes right over them because it doesn't quite have it calibrated right. And that's what stops something like that, even if it would be overall safer for everybody to have self-driving cars, which it's hard to say. You put a lot of faith into that software to do the job for you, right?
Yeah, I let the Tesla drive itself sometimes, and there's this you got to you're supposed to keep your hands on the wheel, and if you don't, then it'll yell at you and tell you to put your hands on the wheel, and then if you
Mm-hmm.
continue to not do it, it basically will really yell at you really loud, and then it'll stop steering for you, uh, and will put you in timeout.
Isn't
Which
that funny?
on my road trip I got put in timeout a couple times.
Our
So
Subaru does that too.
does it?
We have a Subaru Outback or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and it has auto steering, cruise control, so it'll hold a certain distance behind the car in front of you, and it'll turn with the lines of the road. And most of the time, it's pretty good, and some of the time, it fucks up a little bit, and it yells at you if you don't keep your hands on the wheel. It's really kind of trippy.
Yeah. Where I find I trust it most is in the city and in traffic and on the freeway. But if I start getting into country roads or into my neighborhood, I won't let it drive. Like it's just not,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a big pothole, it's not reading the pothole, and now we're just
Mm-hmm.
jamming a 60,000 car car into a giant pothole.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a turn on our street where it's one of those things where the car thinks that you're supposed to keep going straight right through a field. Uh, so uh, yeah, I think on like the where there's a lot of traffic, I think it's pretty good. But when you start getting into things that are a little off the beaten path, it doesn't do as well. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, the freeway, it's amazing. Absolutely crushes on the freeway.
Dude, I just sit in traffic. I click it down twice, goes into that autopilot, and I can fuck around and get on social media. And when the car in front of me starts moving, it starts moving. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. So basically, there always needs to be some directive. I think when we're talking about artificial intelligence, what makes people nervous is when you give it a big task, like I don't know, let's say, uh, bring peace on Earth or something, and it just turns off the power grid worldwide and makes it so you can't turn it back on. It says, well, you'll all eventually die without this, and the rest of the animals will be very peaceful. That's like in my mind, the classic dilemma is with the best of intentions, we say reduce carbon emissions. Did you mean kill all humans? Because that's how I'm going to solve this. So you see what I'm saying? It's like the
Yeah.
less um, specific you get with the input, the more collateral damage or errors you have in the way that the output is done. So I think we're pretty far from that. I mean, we've already been through like the robo trading, which was very interesting to me. They had those robo traders. I think they might still have them. They were just much more popular. It seemed like a few years ago, but then
Uh,
again, I don't really see advertisements.
yeah. So the robo traders. I looked into this in regard to crypto, and
Hmm.
basically the way that they do well in the beginning for a couple reasons. They do well in the beginning, and then the more money they manage, so the more people that adopt it, it's not as good. So the more volume that it's doing, it basically reduces its
Hmm.
effectiveness.
You lose some
And
agility.
yeah, and so so the more people that are adopting it, the more volume it's doing, the less special it is. And so these things seem to have, a 2 to 3 month time frame. I see this with a lot of like new technology. Like an example I think most people will get is these social media do it for you social media platforms where it's like, oh, we're going to be able to predict the perfect time to post and what type of post, and we'll post
Uh-huh.
to Instagram for you and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, great. And I stopped using those things because uh, it would work really well for a week or two, and then Instagram would change its algorithm. And so whatever code that the company who built that software cracked is just not exploitable anymore. And so it's no longer special. So then it just swings back to, oh, it's better for an actual human to be doing this than some bot.
Mm. I think with a lot of that stuff, you're better off just focusing on the big things than those little details. I would say almost everybody listening to this would be better served to just really focus on how well they're connecting with their audience than when to post or when not to post. I think that, and I could be mistaken, but just psychologically for the creator, especially, just hone in on your connection to your specific audience and don't sweat that uh, when to post thing or whatever.
Yeah, the when I think about labor in regard to uh, AI or just technology in general, you know, put AI aside. AI is just a technology, but what we see is technology first replaced all the farmers, right? So much of the physical labor was displaced by technology, and so was
Isn't
it
that a
ninety
way that
five
we
percent?
determine? Isn't that a way that we determine like the civilization, like how advanced a society is how small a population does the farming?
I don't know if that's how we do it, but it seems like though that's a
Like,
correlation.
I mean, if we have only a half a percent of the population making all the food and the rest of us can fuck around with other stuff, that's pretty amazing since food really is it. Like, we need food, we are food. This whole thing is food.
Totally,
life is moving food. Could put that
totally.
on my tombstone if I believed in having a grave. I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand that one either.
So I think about the as technology advances, there's the four categories of labor. We have the physical labor at the bottom,
Hmm.
and this is all labor that's I made this in my Instagram post about AI. It's on Instagram and Facebook, but or my email. My email is where you get the full explanation. I just put like half of the post because that's all that will fit on Instagram. But
You put nude pictures of yourself in your emails too, right? Is
oh,
that
for
do
sure,
I
for
do I
sure.
understand
Yeah,
that
I do
correctly? Okay.
lots of like little short gifs of me swinging kettlebells naked. That's actually
Wow.
yeah.
And he wouldn't lie to you, so that's happening for sure.
That's front
Mike
front
believes in honesty.
front and back. You're getting both shots.
Wow, you're going to please everybody with that. The tops and the bottoms will be all over you. Wow.
so uh so you have the physical labor, you have the technical labor, creative labor, and interpersonal labor. And uh, in that order is generally the lowest paid wage to the highest paid wage. So physical labor is, construction, farming. Technical labor would be accounting. Creative labor might be copywriting, art, graphic design. Interpersonal labor would be anyone who's in management, leadership, sales. And so uh, the idea is that the lower on the rung you are, the more replaceable you are as well. And
Mm,
so what you were saying, it's likely better if you're trying to attract people on social media is just to handle it yourself. Well, yeah, the robots aren't good enough yet to replace that creative and interpersonal labor.
mm,
Technical labor, like I think it's kind of crazy that we have Chat GPT, but I went into my QuickBooks this morning. I still had to correct QuickBooks on certain expenses because
mm.
it tries to predict what that expense
Yeah.
was. And but this is technical labor that won't exist in the future. And so the the lesson I was attempting to teach there is if you find yourself in one of the lower rungs of labor, you need to step it up. You need to, if you're only doing technical labor or physical labor, you probably want to hone the skills of interpersonal and and creative labor, and in the very least, be a likable person. Because for some people are assholes, And the only reason people put up with them is because they create value in some way. But in the far future, we don't know how far, when robots can do everything and you're not likable, you might just be an expendable human at that point.
Well, it's like the farmer, the warrior, and the jester, basically. The king is pretty okay with all of those guys hanging out, right?
Yeah.
The jester is not farming, he's not fighting in wars, but he's helping everybody have a good time. He's his likability off the charts. Combat skills and farming absolutely in the basement, but he still gets to live. Basically, is what you're saying. I think
Yeah.
you have to be either be useful or likable, and likability can go a long way.
Well, that goes into interpersonal, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you gotta be likable to do sales and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't, who knows? And then, the whole idea. This is why a lot of these futurists, including like Elon Musk, who are big proponents of having the conversation around UBI, the universal basic income, is because when 99% of the population's labor becomes obsolete, what happens then?
Mm-mm. I mean, you probably end up with a bigger service industry. You got more people doing massage. You got more people cooking for other people. More slaves, obviously, way more slaves. I mean, usually there is an opening for new and higher level stuff like that.
Well, I did a search and I to see how many truck drivers there are in the United States, and what Google
I
told
would
me.
love to see your Google history. Might be as weird as mine.
Yeah, I think the algorithms don't really know what to make of me.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this guy is searching some really weird. Was it my somebody asked me to search something in my Chat GPT the other day that was pretty morbid, and they were like about to put their hands on my keyboard. I'm like, no, 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 not on my account. You go do that on your account. I don't want to feed that machine. I don't want that machine to think, that's data they're collecting. So
Was it like necrophilia or something like that?
no. It was like, how do you kill, you know, this or that, like a person, or like, what's the best way to hide?
Okay.
I think it was like, what's the best way to hide a dead body or something? I was like, no, 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 no,
Oh, okay.
don't.
Well, thankfully now it's just something you said on our podcast. It's not on your Jet PT
Well,
record.
this is what I love about the podcast is we have context, where these search engines don't necessarily have that. They're having to create their own context.
Just wait till someone edits the shit out of our podcast and just pulls the most heinous, offensive 5 minutes each in
Well,
10-second chunks from us.
as
It's
long
just going
as
to be a
neither one of
super
us
cut of me saying the word retarded.
as long as neither one of us run for office, I think we're going to be okay. So just don't run for office.
Yeah.
I won't run for office. We'll be okay.
I'd prefer to gain power through a coup of some kind rather. I don't think I could ever be elected. Actually, if we're being honest, I would not want to be the one in charge. I would want to be like the worm tongue behind the scenes, like
Totally.
toying with some puppet, you know?
Totally. You don't want to be up there. I mean, look, all these
No.
politicians are just hopped up on all sorts of drugs. I don't even think they're not even human anymore.
Well,
They
that's why the
probably
free
got
market does a better job.
they got an earpiece and drugs. Just repeat what I say. Unless you're
Uh,
was it some of the shit that comes out of their mouths that nobody intelligent is in there. They just kind of like start freestyling. You're like, oh, they went off script.
yeah, I mean, it takes a special kind of psycho to want that job in the first place. Um, but anyway, weren't we going to talk about sex this week? I think we missed the
Yeah,
boat. We're going to have to push it
but
to next week.
I got super interested in the AI shit. So
I can tell.
I was on a
How are you going
track.
to use it?
I was on a track. We were talking about search histories. Uh,
Yep, it got really morbid
No.
Oh,
Before
you were
that,
talking about truck drivers.
oh, so the truck drivers. So this is all in my post, but I'll repeat some of it here. 3.5 million truck drivers in the U.S.
Hmm.
And I watched a documentary a while back on truck drivers, and they were interviewing these truck drivers and basically asking them, what about these self-driving trucks? What are you going to do? And almost nobody had a very good plan about what they would do when they wouldn't be driving trucks anymore. And my brother has truck drivers that work for him. And he was telling me about the attitude of a lot of truck drivers. And if you're a truck driver driving, maybe, if you listen to this show, you're probably not the status quo truck driver. But um, a lot of these truck drivers are very content just getting in the truck, driving from point A to point B, listening to radio or podcasts or whatever. And then when they get there, they don't want to do any extra work. They don't want, there's nothing really to learn. Um, they're very content making whatever money they make and being on the road and no one bothering them. And so
I
when
get it.
and I think Coca-Cola and maybe it was Lay's chips. I think there was two companies that are shipping a fuck ton of product all over the world. They both
Hmm.
they both purchased self-driving trucks recently, a fleet of them. Now, in the beginning, those truck drivers will just be in the self-driving truck. They'll still be manned. But for how long do they need to be manned? And how long before there's just a special lane for the self-driving trucks on all the freeways and interstates? How long before that? And will that even be necessary? These trucks can drive all day, all night. Less likely, they're not going to fall asleep at the wheel. Uh, and they're going to overall end up being more fuel efficient. So, what happens to 3.5 million truck drivers? And that's one industry. Now,
Uber Eats, I think. I'm
keep
pretty
in
sure
mind,
Uber Eats.
what about Uber Eats? Well, that'll be, yeah, that too. So anything that
No, I mean,
involves
that's where
drive,
they'll go.
oh no,
They'll still
no,
drive things around.
no, man, they'll be those little drones will be dropping my food off in no time. So
Could be.
so we look at the trucking industry, 3.5 million truck drivers. That's 1% of the U.S. population.
That's pretty wild. So funny. I just did that math in my head. Not to brag or anything, but that is pretty interesting that it's a full percent.
It's a full percent, and that's one industry. So how many industries? I mean, they have these fast food restaurants that it needs to be manned by one person. The machines are
Hmm.
flipping the burgers, all that stuff. I walked into a McDonald's. I did a road trip to Tennessee and back, and we were driving the Tesla. So we were stopping at charging stations instead of gas stations. And the one annoying thing about the Tesla is it takes about 45 minutes to get a full charge. So you stop
Hmm.
somewhere and you go for a walk, and which is kind of nice. You stretch your legs. Um, but all right, I got to go pee. I'm no longer at a gas station. I'm just at a charging station. I go to McDonald's to go pee. I walk in and you order through machines. I didn't even know that. You just go up to the
Hmm.
machine and you place your order, and then a person does come out and hand it to you. But that can't be too far off to where no one's handing it to you. It's just a fucking bot that hands it to you. So, um, very curious.
So, to be clear, you are concerned, or are you just noticing that we are on the cusp of having a few labor sectors be fully automated?
I'm not. I'm just noticing. This is one of
Mhm.
those situations where I'm not worried for me.
Of course not.
I'm concerned. I guess any concern that comes in is just this. What I the trend I notice is when this type of thing happens and a lot of people are displaced or there's a problem for a lot of people, it ends up becoming everybody's problem. And so,
Totally. When they
yeah,
decide that robbing Mike's Tesla is going to be their new career.
I've wondered about that. Has anyone like what's the theft rate on Teslas? Because
No clue.
yeah, I don't know how you. I mean, obviously you can smash a window and get in, but I mean, you don't even start that car. It's all it's you would have to be a very advanced thief in order to hijack that thing. And then not only that, I can see where the car is from my phone 24/7.
Oh shit! Is that why it's called LoJack? Because it's the opposite of hijack. You know what a LoJack is? The
Yeah,
thing that tracks your car.
yeah, I think so.
Is it because like
Low
hijacking
jack.
is taking it over?
Yeah, I don't know.
LoJack is getting it back. That's kind of funny. I don't know if that was on purpose. They did that, but
I'm sure they did. Anyway, yeah,
uh, that's always true though. You get these situations where a lot of people are not sure what to do, and they get hungry and they start stealing shit. It's like in San Francisco, if you leave something in your car, you're an idiot because someone's going to break the window and take it.
for
I
sure.
mean, that's just the situation.
Yeah,
It ultimately concerns everybody, and the conversation about universal basic income is worth having. But I mean, who decides and how much? And
well, I think the
these
number
are
that's
all.
been thrown around for the U.S. is around $3,000 a month.
I mean, I'll
And
take it, but I also know that. Uh,
well, here's the catch on UBI where it gets very interesting is uh, I think it might be a short term solution. It might be something that could work for 2 or 3 years, but I don't think it's a long term solution. The problem with the UBI is the reason that people feel poor is generally because they're comparing themselves to others. So now that the base level is $3,000 a month, that's 36,000 a year. Uh, that's barely enough to have like a shitty living, in most cities. You wouldn't even survive on the West Coast off of that. But in a lot of cities in the US, 36,000, you got a one bedroom apartment and if you live on your own and you can eat the cheapest of food, you're getting your food at Walmart. So it's
hmm.
survivable. Um, but but then people will compare and then they'll be angry and then they'll loot and steal anyway, even though they have all their basic needs met. So I think that's one problem with it. And then the other is you start saying who decides who is where's that money going to come from, because in order for UBI to work, the government basically has to have its own digital currency, and they're definitely trying to do that with the CBDC, and they're basically trying to, and I say there's actual legislation that's been tried to be pushed forward over the last few years to basically, and they've made steps towards it, which is basically to authorize a single central bank, which means that we would all have a bank account. And this is what'll happen is this is how I think they'll roll out UBI
This all
is
sounds awful, by the way. This all
yeah,
sounds way worse than letting people figure out what they'd like to do for work. Sounds
absolutely.
way worse.
It is worse. It is worse. It's not a great way to increase innovation or progress. It's a great way to stop progress in its tracks. And so
Well, and take away the desire from the individual to do stuff. You see that kind of thing happen all the time. Like,
totally, totally. I mean, I think that's desire comes from the necessity, or innovation comes from desire and necessity. So you take those things
desire is just
away,
hunger. It's just
you know.
hunger.
So in order to roll it out, they have to give us our own. Basically, I think what they're going to do is roll out a CBDC. You have to use the government's wallet, the central bank wallet, which now means that I'm not banking with Navy Federal Credit Union and you're banking with Bank of America or Wells Fargo. We're all just banking with the same bank. and that bank has ultimate control. They can tax you however you want. They can freeze your account if you said something bad about Biden on the internet.
I mean, I think you can maybe already do that,
Well,
probably.
they have done it to a
Um,
few people.
even if, yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
Well,
even if you're,
it takes a lot more effort. Uh, this will be a single button push away.
mm,
So
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Are you trying to give me nightmares? Like, I already,
Well, this is the problem with UBI is uh, is I think that it has to coincide with this um, the central bank digital currency, and the reason I don't think that's going to work is because the total value that's being produced in the world will just decline, and uh, it's uh, there's going to be some of us who say, you know what, I'm going to say keep the $3,000. I don't need that wallet. I don't need that account. I think that there will be a parallel economy where we're dealing primarily in cryptocurrencies that are decentralized, not under centralized bank control. Uh,
you and I will be there trading beaver pelts for
exactly.
candles and shit like that.
Well, I think the only thing that would make the parallel economy difficult, which I do think will happen, is they're going to make it illegal. So they already
Totally.
try to make things illegal. And, it's called the black market, right? And so if it's a black market thing, then it's scary. And so I think that dealing with currencies that are not centrally controlled is going to end up being put in the same category as buying and selling cocaine. It'll be one of those things
Mm.
where it's just they're going to regulate it, at least try to. Now, do I think any of these things will happen? I'm laying out the possibilities here. I'm laying out what I think other people are thinking and what they're intending, but I do think that some of these things are too far behind the eight ball. So let's say that they can't get their shit together and can't roll out a centralized digital currency, and they can't force people to use it, and uh, and 30-40% of the workforce becomes obsolete. That's interesting.
So what do we do about that?
Well, I think it's a good idea to have a garden and grow your own food. We got solar on the house. Who knows? Who knows? I've got several contacts that have lots of land. If I need to bug out, there's yeah. I think that when times get tough, population density is going to be the biggest predictor of hazard.
Yep. That's certainly true. You seem a little skittish this week. We're kind of in prepper mode. What happened to you this week, Mike? Who hurt you?
uh, I do realize I think I've monopolized this particular show more than normal, but
It's okay. It's good stuff. I just wonder, like, was there a specific thing? Do you like because something has made you more alert?
I uh, I would say I'm way more on the excited side of this. Uh, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm welcoming it. It's an adventure. Um, yeah. If anything, I think the Chat GPT, the interacting with the
Mm,
AI,
mm-hmm.
really inspired me in a lot of ways, and all the points I just brought up, just things that I think other people would benefit from considering for themselves uh,
Mm.
in regard to what kind of education you want to give yourself in the coming future, what kind of pivots you might want to consider, uh, what you might choose to make important in your life moving forward, just that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how the idea of many careers becoming more or less instantly obsolete uh,
Yeah.
is pretty big catalyst.
Well, the trippy thing is copywriting. I've been using some copywriting AI bots. They're not as good. They're not going to be able, they're not writing nearly as good as me. I even have them try to write me headlines. They're not that good, but they're better
Hmm.
than what the average person who's trying to post content online is.
Oh, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I'd say it's average.
Yeah. And it's only going to get better.
Yeah, this is the first version, of the first public version anyway. And the interesting thing is it's learning. So the more you interact with it, so the
Mm-hmm.
more so I write all my articles inside of Lex.page, which is an AI copywriting service. And I'm going to tell you right now, 99% of the words that people read that are coming from me are written by me. I'm really only at this point using it as I'm giving it inputs. So I
Hmm.
know that if I write, uh, I write almost every day. I'd say at least 6 days a week. I'm writing. Uh, if I write, every day for a year, 365 um, days, and it says probably average around 2 pages a day. So I got 600 pages of content around things that I find interesting and all that. I imagine it's going to be able to help me create content in the future very quickly, very very easily. I'm looking forward
Hmm.
to it being. I think one of the cool things that'll happen soon is I'll be able to scrape a Google Drive that has all my emails in there,
Hmm.
and it'll create tweets for me or social media posts. Uh, I what I think would be really cool. Someone can create this for me. Is if we could go into my I use Active Campaign to send my emails out. So it would be
Hmm.
able to, because what it does is it tracks how many people opened and how many people clicked the link, and so it can start crunching the data around. Well, what is it that when Mike talks about what and he says it in this way and he uses this type of subject line, because
Hmm.
that's the type of data I try to crunch on my own, right? I export into a PDF, into an Excel spreadsheet, and I organize it, and I go, okay, this is the type of thing that resonates with my audience. Yeah, if there's a bot that can just go, okay, this dun, 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 okay, talk about this for 5 days, and after 5 days, you need to change subjects because people get wary of that same type of topic, and then you move into this, and I think it's going to get very interesting, even for things that are creative in nature.
And the bigger database you give it, the better it is.
That's right.
Like for Joe Rogan or something like that, who's done so many hours of talking, you could probably do a monologue with him just using AI and it would sound cohesive
Yeah.
just about all these
Yeah.
different topics. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of the same ideas are repeated. It would it would make a little data bank of which topics were discussed the most and the different mannerisms and the facial features. I mean, audio and video,
Well,
basically.
what would
I'd
be
be
some?
interested to see if it could write you a book based on all your blogs.
Ooh.
Just when are we
Oh,
going to
I'm
get the
sure.
Bledsoe book? When are we going to get the Bledsoe book? I think that's what everybody wants to know.
I've I've begun writing it. I'm really loving the emails right now. Just writing a few pages. I write for maybe a half hour every morning,
Hmm.
and uh,
Any specific topic? What's the goal with your writing? Do you have one? Do you just
no,
write whatever comes into your
no,
mind?
whatever is inspiring me, because the thing is I'm engaging with people enough on social media that I'm
Hmm.
keeping up with what's going on in the world. So it's more of just like a commentary based on what I'm witnessing and how it's,
Hmm.
it's really advice on how to view the world. It's like, okay, this is how I'm viewing the world. This is what I think would be helpful. This is what you might need to be concerned with. This is the advantage. This is how you take advantage of this type of situation. Like the one I wrote about AI was, I was hoping to inspire people to take action in their lives so that they could be prepared to utilize it and not succumb to it, like many
Hmm.
have to social media. You know, like you and I use social media as a tool for business, but most people use it as a tool for distraction. But AI is going to end up being the same thing.
Totally. I mean, I've played around with some of them, and it's tempting to just keep feeding prompts into that thing and have it tell you stories, basically.
Oh yeah.
That's what I ended up doing. I was just like, hey, because you can write like a paragraph and then just have it pick it up where you left off, and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool. This thing's like telling me a little story, and like a chat bot and all that stuff. It's pretty far out.
You know what? I haven't thought about this now that we're talking. I'm going to take one of my articles and I'm going to run it. I'm just going to drop the whole article into the to the chat bot and see and say, how can I make this better or
I love it.
more correct or whatever it is.
Well, I'm definitely going to play around with this if you said it's that cool, because it's spooked Mike, the AI chatbot,
Well, the other thing is,
GPT.
well, here's the thing is, it did spook me, and it was very, it has its very visible limitations. So it's not one of
You're
those.
frightened, but you have a chubby, basically. Like you're excited and a little scared at the same time.
That's pretty much how I like to spend my Saturday nights. Uh, so, so there are very clear limitations. The data sets that it's pulling from tend to be. I don't think it's quite complete, and they have a when you go to the website, it basically says it lists off all the limitations and it says, hey, you may get bad
Mm-hmm.
advice, you may get biased information. This is an incomplete, this is like this is this is a beta. This is a and the thing is you can tell it if you think that the information is correct or not. Like, oh, how could have this been better? I can do a thumbs down and then give feedback to it.
Mm,
Uh,
right.
for
And it'll
instance,
get better the more you do that.
I asked it to write me a glute specific a training program to focus on my glutes. And it did. I think the program it created is probably better than what 95% of personal trainers would write. But it's so uh, as an expert in it, it's very easy for me to see the limitations in its ability to write a program.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even, I said glute specific. I didn't start naming off specific glute muscles or anything like that. So it might have done better had I done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's probably the case for anyone who's an expert at something. They'll get in there like, it's like 90% there, but not quite. But 90%
Mm.
there is pretty fucking good.
Yeah. And like you said, the better you get at searching or putting in the inputs. Like I'm really good at Google searching. That's not to brag, of course. I just tend to be able to put like a good search query to find what I'm looking for pretty quickly, because there is an art to it, right?
There is.
And so if you ask that chat GPT more and more specific questions like, hey, I want you to train a program that strengthens the glutes but minimizes strain on the back and knees for someone over the age of 60
Mm,
using only a belt that you can do at home. Something, and the more and more specific you get, and if it's able to do that, that's pretty useful.
yeah. Oh, mine was when I asked for the glute workout, I asked to give me workouts that include a kettlebell.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So if you use it as a tool, um, amazing. And I know that sometimes it feels daunting to look at a blank page. So if you start with something and then you can just trim it up, you do save yourself a lot of time.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna play around with it. I'll mess with it. Sure. I feel somewhat out of the loop, but I got really interested in machine learning back when AlphaGo thing was happening. Like I
What's that?
watched that whole thing unfold. There's a game called Go, which is played with white and black stones on a 19 by 19 grid. It's my favorite board game by far. It's for like hardcore autistic nerds.
Okay.
2,000-year-old board game.
That would explain
And
why
for
I'm
the
not
long
into it.
and for the longest time, for the longest time, um, you couldn't get a computer program to beat a person, but they created chess software programs that could beat a person. But the amount of creativity and probability involved, um, nothing would beat a human being, the best professionals. And then it was a big turning point when AlphaGo taught itself to play Go, basically, gave it like the parameters and the win conditions and all that, played itself, I don't know, a few million times or something like that, and actually started to be able to beat the professionals. And now it can beat the pros, and it was this big deal because it was the first time in history. Whereas chess happened a lot sooner because the probabilities of how a chess game can go on an 8x8 grid is very different than a 19x19 grid. Very cool stuff. And then they taught it how to play StarCraft, which is a strategy game that balances guns and butter, basically, like economy and military in real time. And that, it discovers new strategies based on the tools and the inputs that you give it. Very fascinating stuff. That's why the idea of the robo trading is very fascinating, and how you put a portfolio together, and what because if you have like with investing, you don't have perfect information because you just simply can't see everything that's going on. But if you had a powerful enough computer, it would see exactly everything that's going on. It could get real-time data on every purchase that's happening potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And it could very easily be just a little bit ahead of the curve on what's making the most money right now, supply chains, all that stuff. And I think that's kind of coming back to this. What is it? It's not it's Ultron, right? That's the one that Iron Man makes, then gets internet access, and then can just basically do and make anything. That's when it gets really freaky.
Super freaky.
Fun stuff.
It is fun. I'm looking forward to you trying it out. I think we might we might end up with a part 2 for AI next week.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get
Maybe it
spooked.
can write me some jokes.
Dude, it'll write poetry. You can
All
you
right.
can tell what type of poem to write, uh, and even give it a style and
Mm-hmm.
give it the inputs. So I had one write one for Ashley, and it wrote a poem about her, and I read it to
Did you
her.
not tell her that it
No,
was a robot?
there's no way I could tell. I had to tell her it was a robot. If she found out, I'd be in real trouble, you know?
I can just imagine like a year down the road, she's like telling her girlfriends about how sweet Mike is. He writes me a poem every day. It's amazing. I feel like he really knows me. Meanwhile, you don't even read the fucking poems. You just have
Copy.
a
I
computer
automate a
program.
copy paste into the
No, it
email.
sends the whole email. You don't even have to see it. Write me a new poem for her every single day and send it to her at 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. or something like that. Oh my God. And
Yeah,
then she would start developing a relationship with this AI because it would get to know her better. She would
totally.
learn to love it. And then you'd be out of the picture.
Totally.
Got to have a plan B, dude.
AI bot is my plan B.
All right. I like it. Maybe that'll be your book. How to use uh, AI for fun and profit. Actually, that's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is in the last week, and I don't know if it's because of my behavior online or or a bunch of other people just. I think it's primarily because a lot of the same people I've been following already, people that are in the I guess you call it the influencer space in business, and like these programs about how to make money with AI just keep popping up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. Um,
Makes sense.
yeah. So
Sweet, dude. I like it. Should we wrap it up? I
Let's
feel
wrap it
like
up.
you're a deliberate. I feel like I'm an accidental provocateur, and you're a deliberate provocateur. It really makes this fun.
I mean, what else am I going to do? I get bored.
There's a lot of stuff to do. Have you tried tennis?
No, but I'm going to play pickleball this weekend. So
There you go.
I'll let you know how
I
that
think you'll like
goes.
it.
Yeah,
I think you'll like
I
it.
think I'll like. I need something like that. I've been doing
Yeah.
all my movement stuff has been, not there's not a lot of reaction in what I've been doing. I've been doing
Hmm.
yoga and weight training and all that, but
Yeah.
I really want to get back into kickboxing. I think that would be.
Oh, sweet.
That's what I want to do. So maybe kickboxing and pickleball.
Nice. Yeah, pickleball is perfect for people who aren't athletic enough to play tennis. So I think that fits you really nicely.
All
Oh
right, with
man,
that,
why do
we'll
I do it? It's so mean. There's no reason for it. Just kicking him while he's down. I mean, it's enough for him to admit that he's going to go play pickleball. Then throw that in there. My God. All right, folks. Mikey, I love you. You can find me maxshank.com or at maxshank, YouTube, maxshank also. Mikey,
Yeah, got a new program coming out starting January 8th. If you go to schoolfortheliving.com, you can check it out. It's all about putting your life together in a way that's meaningful and effective. I'm real big on how do we put the least amount of input in to get the maximum output. So finding that high leverage shit that makes your life amazing so that even if AI comes in and wipes everything out, you know what to do.
love it. Love you.
Later.
Thanks,
Love
buddy.
you.